Hăīre, φίλε, and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at John chapter 5, verses 45 through 47, tying off the end of the entire chapter. But first, last time in John chapter 5, here's our rubric. Let's get started. Me docete hoti ego kategoreso humon proston patera. Estin ho kategoron humon mouses. Eis hon humes elpicate. Egar episteuete mousei. Episteuete an emoi. Perigar emu ekenos egrapsa. E de tois ekenu grammasin u pisteuete. Pos tois emois, re masin pisteus sete. The very beginning of verse 45, we have a negative with the second person plural verb with the epsilon iota contract from epsilon. Diphthong there. And then the tau epsilon tells us that the person is second. And this is present. And we have the option either of an indicative or of an imperative. But since we've got may rather than u, I think an imperative is going to would be more reasonable, especially with the context we have in the rest of these three verses. So active, imperative, hoti clause, and ego, unnecessary first person pronoun, therefore it's emphatic. And then we've got kategoreso. Eta sigma is the addition to kategoreo. Note also that we have an eta here. Kata is a prepositional prefix. So rather than an epsilon appearing before the kappa, it'll appear where the natural stem of the verb is prior to the addition of the preposition. And that would be changed with the a contracting with the e, we get the eta in this case. Just telling us that rather than being future, which would be the natural assumption with this, had there been no addition to the stem on the front, we have the aorist tense. Not aorist, sorry. Kategoreo. Kategoreso. I have misidentified this. So everything I've said about how that appears is correct, but not for this verb. The present stem does have the eta right there, and so this is not a kata prepositional prefix. Instead, this is the verb kategoreo with epsilon contract. So this eta is not telling us that this is a past tense. Instead, the eta sigma is telling us that this is a future tense. The augmenting vowel, I think, does actually go there. So, my mistake. So this verb means to accuse, to bring charges against. It's used a lot in Lysias, and I think it may appear, or it probably does appear in Plato's Apology, not Plato's, Socrates' Apology, written by Plato. Kategoreo takes the genitive in its object, which we do find right here, plural, common, referring to all the Jews he's speaking to. I think we've already determined that they're mostly men. Could be women in there. There's no real indication from the text one way or another. Pros prepositional phrase, ton patera, and then estin is a verb, so the prepositional phrase closes here. Pros taking the accusative, singular, and masculine, the word for father. And docete means to think, to seem in the impersonal form. So if it was in a third person, it would be, it does not seem. But since we've got the second person, do not think. Sorry. I wrote it as present as I was going through. Estin is a verb. This is from Amy. We don't need to parse it. It's just the third person singular. Ho kategoron. And this really should have been my warning that it has the present tense like I originally thought before second guessing myself. We've got the omega nu for the participial ending. That circumflex showing us the contraction. That one doesn't show us the contraction because it's in the future stem. So we've got epsilon plus omega, so no change in that actual ending, but this is the nominative article also indicating that singular, present stem, active participle, and it is masculine, Again, indication by the article. And then humon, again, because this verb is taking the genitive as its other form up there did, as the thing accused. Plural, common. And then mouses, with our Greek nominative singular masculine ending, is the subject of the verb. The verb just saying paraphrastically, indicating a very clear ongoing action. So Moses doesn't just accuse them once. He continues to accuse them throughout all of time, all of the time that they are currently experiencing. Unless they were to do the opposite of what Jesus says hereafter, or to actually follow the advice that he's giving them. Then in our next clause, we have prepositional phrase beginning eis plus accusative, which we see in this hon, the relative pronoun, singular, masculine. And then humes, epsilon iota singular, either a accusative plural or nominative singular. It's not going to be nominative singular, nominative plural. It's not going to be accusative because eis already has its object, and here we have our verb el picate, alpha tau epsilon for the second person plural, as we've seen beforehand. But this is from el pizzo, which should be an e on the front, except for the added verb of the past tense, changing the double e into an eta. And then we've also got this kappa telling us that it's the perfect stem of the verb, active and indicative. That means to hope, in whom you all hope, have hoped. And this might be intended to have the perfect with present impact use, as I think I've mentioned beforehand. So they would be, you all hoped in him, and this hope continues to have an impact today. Or it could just be that you hoped in him in the past, though the aorist was what Jesus and John writing this would typically use. So I don't know whether or not it should be a present perfect impact. Into verse 46 then, we've got a conditional clause, gar, and taking a look at our verb. Note, episteuete, we have this epsilon at the front telling us this is going to be a past tense. There's no change in the stem, and we've got our normal indicative ending, epsilon tau epsilon, which then should begin to tell us what type of conditional sentence we have. We've got an a, so it's relatively normal. Imperfect indicative, it's not one of the more hypothetical ones. Taking a look at the verb in the next clause, participius or apodosis, I can never remember which. We've got on telling us that this is the other half of the conditional clause, and the exact same form of the verb here. So that being no change in the stem, therefore present tense, but the augmenting vowel at the beginning. Past tense, the only option is a perfect with perfect, imperfect, second person plural, imperfect, active, indicative, likewise for this one. And mouse, epsilon, iota, pisteuo, taking the dative tense, singular, masculine. So an imperfect indicative in both clauses of a conditional gives us the simple particular conditional. So as I said, it's nothing very complex. We do have another conditional coming up pretty soon, which is slightly different. So I'll write that down and the translation. Believe, Moses, you know all those words. Oh, sorry. Emoi, dative, singular, as the object of this episteuete. Apologies, another correction, but rather than me just writing the wrong thing, I failed to remember that the on changes a simple particular into a contrary to fact. And it's the present contrary to fact in this case rather than the past contrary to fact, because we've got the imperfect tense, as already noted. Had we had the aorist tense instead, then it would be the past contrary to fact. So I've also added in this parentheses, but you don't. So the implication being, for if you believed Moses, which you don't, you would believe in me, but you don't. In both cases, it's an implied. I think it's something that we should, when you come across a contrary to fact conditional in Greek or in Latin, you should make it very clear in the translation, whether it's just in brackets or in a footnote, something to show that this is not the case. Like there's a very important passage in one of Paul's letters where you've got contrary to fact statements, but I'm not actually even sure if there is an English translation that has the implication, what the Greek implies, actually said in the English. So it should be in the Pauline letter. It's like it's when he's asking, are all prophets, are all those other words. Yeah, never mind. Anyway, moving on into the rest of verse 46 before this video drags on into eternity. Perigar emu. Peri taking the genitive, ekanos with omicron sigma, nominative, singular, masculine, so it can't be part of the prepositional phrase. Singular, common. Peri, when it takes the genitive, means concerning or regarding the object, so regarding the emphatic me, or possibly just the way that John or Jesus himself uses that pronoun. That one, grapsen. Note we have epsilon nu. This is grapho, so we have a augmenting vowel at the beginning, and the stem has changed with this psi. With the stem change, it's aorist tense, especially with, not with the stem change, with both the stem change and the augmenting vowel, aorist tense, epsilon nu for the third person singular. And concerning the aspect of the verb, egrapsin, it's aorist tense because he wrote in the past and he's done writing. He's dead. He can't write anymore. Verse 47, another conditional clause, e de tois. Tois tells us dative plural masculine or neuter. Ekenu, omicron, upsilon, genitive, singular, masculine, referring back to the same one, therefore back to Moses. Owning, tois, and grammasin. Here we have the interesting third declension, dative plural ending. Dative plural neuter with the article, confirming that for us. And here we finally have our verb, a negative. No augment to the verb, which means we could have a subjunctive, or we just don't have a past tense verb. And looking at the stem, there's no sigma, as we would expect for future or any of the other principal parts. It's just epsilon, tau, epsilon, so present. And this means we have either a simple conditional, like I misidentified the previous one as, or we have some form of contrary to fact. We need to take a look at the other verb in the clause before we can make a definitive statement. Pos, adverb how. Pisteoete, taking tois grammasin as its object. Just note that. Another dative, emois, another emphatic, also dative plural, common. Remasin, this one, rather than being the object, as emu was, is functioning as a possessive pronoun of remasin, alpha, sigma, iota, nu, for dative plural neuter. So then this should actually be neuter to match the thing it owns rather than the common personal pronoun as I initially identified it. It should have been obvious to me that it wasn't a normal pronoun because you get the plural forms here rather than our standard singular in the common form. And then pisteo sete, no augmenting vowel, but we do have the sigma, putting this into the future, same ending there. So other than the tense, it is identical to that one. So I'm just going to mark future, no need to parse. And editors think that this is a question and a conditional statement. Yeah, that makes sense. So present tense with a future tense. We've got a. We have no on. With the on, it would be a contrary to fact of some form, or it could be a contrary to fact, that is. But instead, if we had two present tenses, then we would have the simple present conditional. With the future, I think it still functions as a simple present, as often, if I'm remembering right, and never trust me on these sorts of things, the future and the present tense in these sorts of conditionals are effectively interchangeable. Quick note, pos is what makes this into the question, not the conditional, though with the conditional, as I said, it could easily fit as a question. So there's our translation. Let's take a look at it in its own context. Do not suppose that I myself will bring charges against you to the Father. The man accusing you all is Moses, in whom you yourselves have hoped. For if you believed Moses, you would believe in me, but you don't. For concerning me, that man wrote. And if that one's writings you do not believe, how my own words will you believe? Thank you for taking a look at this with me. I hope it has been helpful for you. I hope that you have a very good day, and I look forward to Chapter 6. Farewell.